What's up, everybody? This is indeed the E-Man, chilling like a villain, singing like Bob Dylan, keeping on low with some dope stuff. Oreos. And today's gonna be a great show today, guys. I'm about to talk with somebody who is like one of my favorite podcasters. She has a really great podcast called Really Famous, and she's talked to everybody from Ben Vereen to Danny Aiello to Ted Lang and so many other celebrities. And what I like about her podcast most is she keeps it real. And she's gracious enough to come to the show today. I want to say hello to Kara Meyer Robinson. What's up, Kara? How you doing?
Hey, how are you? It's good to be here. It's
I'm
Mayor.
good.
I'm going to correct you. I hate to correct people, but
Oh,
I
it's
should
good.
probably tell everybody on the way in. It's Kara Mayer Robinson, like the mayor
Kara
of town.
Mayer. Are you related to John Mayer?
I am not, but you know what? You
Oh,
never know, right? It could be in the
hey, you never
DNA.
know. It's a small world.
Yeah.
How are things? You're in New York, right?
Yeah, I'm in the suburbs of New York, and things are going well over here. I just finished up an interview a little while ago, and
Oh,
now I'm happy to be chatting with you.
I'm glad. Thank you so much for doing this with me. This is great. I just wanted to start off by asking, because I'm a fan of the show, and I noticed your theme song it kind of reminds me of a Superman-esque theme song, and your name is Kara, which is like Supergirl's name. So is that a coincidence or what?
That's definitely a coincidence. I didn't know that that was her name until I was actually passing by the TV and I heard it's Callista Flockhart, right? I mean,
Yeah,
oh no,
yeah.
it's not Callista Flockhart's show, but it's all right. I'm giving it away now. I don't actually watch it, but I did overhear it. So it's Callista Flockhart is on the show, but Supergirl's name is Kara, right?
Yes, yep. That's her
Okay,
name,
yeah.
Kara
Uh,
Zor-El. So
Yep,
yep.
I
Yeah.
guess I guess that was just some kind of coincidence. I mean, I'd like to consider myself a Supergirl, but I don't know that I qualify for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're pretty awesome. I think everybody has an origin story, though, and I'm just curious though, what is your origin story? You were born in New York, correct?
Well, I was born in New Jersey, and
Me too.
all right. Hey,
Yep.
cheers to that. Jersey.
Yes.
I have to
Jersey.
tell you, I'm more proud of my Jersey now than I was growing up, but there is something about people from New Jersey. I just feel like there's something that connects us.
There is.
And I recognize it in other people. Like if I'm in California or something and I'm talking to somebody and we're connecting, it's like not unusual for them to be like, "Oh yeah, well, I was born in New Jersey." And it's like,
Yeah.
"Of course you were born in New Jersey."
Yeah. A lot of great people from Jersey. A lot of great. And so yeah, I love like whenever I talk to somebody from New Jersey, the first thing that comes out of my mouth is, I miss White Castle. But you know, I mean, Miss White Castle, or just I missed it. I missed the area, but I just want to go back and live there. But I want to know, what were you like? What was it like growing up as a kid in Jersey for you?
So I had a pretty good life, I have to say. I was very stable. I have really great parents, and I always like to compare my childhood with the Brady Bunch because I'm a TV person. But the
Nice.
thing is, it was only two of us, my sister and me, and my
Okay.
parents were married forever. So it's not like they were even like step parents or anything. But aside from that, it was just very supportive environment. It was a nice upbringing. I was shy, I would say. I'm just starting to talk about that now. I didn't really think it was anybody cared about it, but I was talking to a friend recently, and she was like, "People want to know more about like how your personality developed and whatnot." So here's a perfect example. So I was pretty shy when I was little. I would prefer like kids to maybe come over my house instead of me going to some stranger's house to play. And I remember just kind of being on my own a lot, wanting to play by myself, maybe with my sister, and I just was kind of that kind of kid. And then as I got older, I think I came out of my shell a bit more. I guess I was more comfortable talking to other people and whatnot. And now I'm super comfortable talking to other people. In fact, I love it and I eat it up. So it was a process between then and now. But like if in terms of what I was like, that's what I was like. I mean, I was a good kid. I was a pretty good at school, and I did what I was supposed to do.
Okay.
Teachers were happy with me. I didn't really get into much trouble. I had a few stories here and there, I guess, but nothing major. We had a
Right.
summer house in the Adirondacks in upstate New York. And I just remember very relaxed summers, just hanging out at the lake, reading books, watching The
Yeah.
Price is Right every day at 11 o'clock.
Bob
Um,
Barker.
yeah, Bob Barker.
Yeah.
So those were good times. I remember Sunday nights watching Quincy with my dad. We would go to the Grand Union and we would get malted milk balls as a special treat to watch
Nice.
Quincy. So it was like that was my childhood. It was really, I'm lucky.
That sounds beautiful. I mean, and a lot of your childhood reminds me a little bit of mine. Because like when I was growing up in Jersey, like I was telling people before in other interviews, it's like I was very blessed to grow up in the start of MTV, you know, and seeing Michael Jackson moonwalk for the first time,
Yeah.
Madonna, Prince, Purple Rain, and then just being in that area. One of some of my best memories were just chasing after the ice cream truck, or school lunches, that type of thing. So I was very, very fortunate. So my question also is, what movie? Because you interview a lot of celebrities, but what movie changed your life?
Okay. Can I back up and ask you a question? What was your good humor or your ice cream truck favorite? Did you have a staple that you ordered every
Oh,
time?
yes. Okay, so um there were these things called the banana split pops, and they were like 25 cents each. And I love those. I also liked the Pac-Man was the thing. So the
Yeah.
Pac-Man bars, I love those as well. And there's the thing, I think they were called the blue shark bars. What about you?
Okay. Strawberry shortcakes, I think I always like to get.
Strawberry shortcakes, yeah.
And they had those like chocolate eclair or something where they would have like a hard piece of chocolate inside the ice cream on a stick.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
that was always a real treat.
Nice. It,
So, okay,
it,
your question was what movie changed my life? So that's a
mhm.
good question. I'm such a movie person and I always have been. So I would have to say there are so many that had a major impact on me. Since we're talking about our childhoods, I feel like the
Mhm.
one that keeps coming to the surface for me is E.T. Like my two favorite childhood movies were E.T. and Grease. I was obsessed with both of them. I
Nice.
don't know how they changed my life. I mean, I guess I was young, really little for Grease. I don't know. I can't even believe my parents let me watch it. I was so little, but they did. I had no idea like the what was actually going on in half of the scenes, I guess. But I really liked the looks and the dancing and the romance, I guess. So that kind of made me think that there were good things ahead in life. Like you want to get older.
Oh
Now I
yeah.
think a lot of kids kind of feel like everybody's attention now is on kids, right? So this generation of parents, they're all hyper focused on their kids as a project, I think, generally speaking. So kids, not all kids, but many kids grow up with a super focus on, oh, I'm going to get everything I want or whatever I need now. My parents are
Mhm.
going to give me everything I need. Society is all about like, oh, okay, what can we do for all these kids to make sure that they accomplish things and they get into the best colleges and all that. So, and
Yeah.
I'm not saying kids don't deserve attention. Believe me, they do. But I
Yes.
think then we kind of craved adulthood more because we didn't
Mm,
get that much as
right.
kids. Now I feel like I'm contradicting myself because I just said I was so lucky and privileged as a child. And here I am like 2 seconds later, but it's like both are true
Right.
because we were kind of raised to take care of ourselves to a certain degree.
Yeah.
And so we looked at adulthood as like, oh, yeah, I can't wait until I'm an adult. So I think that Greece probably was the beginning of when I would start to look forward to things that would come later when I reached adulthood.
It's interesting you said Greece because I love Greece as well. But it's funny because okay, so when I moved from Jersey, folks got a divorce and I moved to the Carolinas. So it was me, my sister, and my mom. And there was only one television and one VCR in the TV room. And then I had like a little bitty TV or whatever. So my sister and my cousin will watch Grease relentlessly. They're like, come in and watch with us. I'm like, okay, okay. And I started to get into it, right? But they would keep rewinding back to hopelessly devoted to you, and it's just like just so they can learn the song. I'm like, look, man, y'all need to keep the plot moving, man. I want to know if Rizzo got pregnant. But I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's like but I've been brainwashed to love that movie, but I really do love it. But yeah, Grease is awesome. Grease is
Okay,
the
I
word.
was fast forwarding through Hopelessly Devoted to You as well. I was not into those slow scenes either. Believe me, I wanted to get onto, the hand jive. Let's do the hand
Yeah,
jive.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but yeah, yeah, I actually, I watched this interview with Kevin Hart and John Travolta, and I was like, wow, he's been really doing it
Oh,
for a long
yeah.
time.
I
you
know what you're
know,
talking about. Is that Kevin Hart's show that you're talking about that
heart
nobody
to
knows
heart.
about? Yeah.
Yeah, it's on Peacock. Yeah,
Yeah, I saw that too, and it's funny because I don't watch interview shows like that, even though I do them. I don't really
right.
watch that many of them, but that was one that I tuned into because of Kevin Hart. First of all, I
Yeah,
interviewed him, not for my show, but a few years back when I was writing for magazines. I had a cover story to write for
uh huh.
WebMD magazine, and they asked me to interview Kevin Hart, and I was like, "Yeah, of course I'm going to interview Kevin Hart." So I
Yeah,
did, and he's amazing. He has accomplished so many things. It's incredible.
yeah,
And this talk show, I was like, oh, Kevin Hart has a new show, and John Travolta, like, of course. So that was the one
right.
episode that I saw, is the one that you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. It was really cool. I just like I love to hear like his stories about the planes and his movie
Yeah.
career and how he started. I didn't even know he started off on Broadway. So I mean, it was really interesting.
Well, he grew up in New Jersey too, speaking of which.
Get out of here. What part?
Yeah,
Newark?
yeah. He grew up in, I believe, Englewood, New Jersey. And his
Wow,
father had a tire shop in Hillsdale, New Jersey.
wow.
John Travolta. Now you know.
Wow. See,
Hmm.
now no one is half the battle. But
Yeah.
what you said ET as well. And I grew up with ET. I didn't love it like you did, but I can appreciate it for what it was. It like because people were like, oh, it made me cry. I didn't get that. What movie made me feel a certain way was well, of course, The Lion King, but like that was much later. But like Transformers the movie devastated me completely. Which was the 84 movie, not the 2007. But yeah, that movie like shattered me because it's like I didn't expect Optimus Prime to die.
I wish I could continue on this topic, but I never watched these superhero movies. I've probably seen two, like aside from Superman growing up. I'm
Right,
sorry to
right, right.
say. I
Oh,
know,
it's
I know. Everybody's like, what are you talking about? I saw Black Widow.
oh, okay. Did you like it?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I'm also like not really a fantasy person. And again, I'm contradicting myself because ET is a fantasy, but
Right.
I'm not like that was me as a child and this is me today. So I'm really not into fantasy. I really have a hard time suspending disbelief. I like the
Mm,
more real, gritty films, but I did like Black Widow. I was definitely more interested in the human, like the relationships part of
yeah.
the whole thing. I wanted to know more about the sisters. I was very intrigued by their sisterhood. I like that. So and the mom, interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting people characters.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not my favorite one, but I thought it would have made a better series. But anyway, I'm yammering. Now you were a freelance writer for a while,
Yeah.
right? You wrote for the New York sorry, that you wrote for the Wall Street Journal. Where did your passion for writing come from?
So yeah, you were right though. New York Times is another one that
New
I
York
wrote
Times,
for.
yes.
So I don't know that I have a passion for writing per se, but I'll tell you how I got into it.
Okay.
So I was actually when I graduated from college, I had an accounting degree. So I worked in business for a couple of years. I worked for a
Okay.
bank and then I worked for Comedy Central, crunching numbers for them. And then I decided to become a therapist. So I went to grad school, I went to Columbia in New York, and I got a master's. And then I opened up a private practice. So I was listening to people, talking to people, helping them on a regular basis. This was my thing. And then at the time, I noticed that there were a lot of best selling self help books at Barnes and Noble, before Amazon, I guess. And I
Okay.
was like, I feel like I've always kind of liked writing, and I feel like I could write a self help book pretty easily. Based on what I'm doing in my therapy practice. So I actually tried to do that. I did some research. I took like a 1 day class, I remember, in Westchester on how to pitch a book idea to an agent. And then I looked up literary agents who represented books like the one I wanted to create. And so I sent out a book proposal to a bunch of agents for this book idea.
Okay.
And they all came back to me and were like, hey, this is, well, actually, they didn't all come back to me. Most of them totally flat out ignored me. But
Right.
those few that did reach out to me said, this is a cool idea, but you've never written anything. You don't have a platform. So we can't publish you until you're published. So
Okay.
that's how I got into it. So I decided I better get published. And so
Okay.
I pitched a tiny story to my local newspaper and said, "Can I write this story?" And they said yes. And so I published a story, and then I published a few more, and then I worked my way up to more of a regional newspaper. And then when I got myself published there, I kept going to get to these bigger publications that we're talking about. So it's not so much a passion for writing, although I will say one thing, that when I was a staff writer for Women's Health and Fitness magazine, and
Hmm.
when I did that, I would write all these little blurbs on, like, health and fitness and whatever, and I really was into it. I remember having fun with the words and the writing. That was like the only time I really had a passion for writing. And then later I kind of got into the area of interviewing actors. And
Mm.
as I got deeper into that, I knew that was my passion. It wasn't the writing part of it, though, it was the interviewing part. So when I was sitting down having these deep conversations and even light conversations with people, that I knew was my passion. And writing it up was just part of the job.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So it seems like you went to school for something, you and you ended up rolling into something else, and you found what you really love, which is talking to people, which I think is great. You know, as a podcaster, now this is something I'm asking podcaster to podcaster, because this is something that I struggle with. As a podcaster, how do you stay in the moment when you're interviewing somebody that you admire or you've seen on TV? How do you stay in the moment?
Yeah, okay, that's a kind of a hard question. I'm not really sure what I do to do. I think, I have to say that you're calling me a podcaster, which I am, but a couple years ago I started doing video on top of the podcast. So
Mhm.
now I have a YouTube channel. So
Yes.
my videos air everywhere as well. So I will say that when I was a podcaster only, it was a little easier to stay in the moment, because when there are cameras around, and I think this is the case for my guests too, you are more aware of yourself, right? That's
Okay.
just natural. So as a podcaster, when it was just, I wasn't doing like you're doing right now, we're recording on Zoom. So
Right.
there's a video component to it. But before the pandemic, I wasn't using Zoom to record. So for a podcast, it would just be a little voice recorder and two mics and me and my guests. So there would be no cameras looking at us at all. And I
Okay.
preferred that. I was like, this is good because then they can feel relaxed with me. I'm always more concerned that my guest feels in the moment and relaxed. So I think
Okay.
maybe that's what pulls me out of thinking about myself. I think that's probably the answer to that question. So
Okay.
I'm hyper focused on the person who's across from me and
Mhm.
how we're relating to each other. I'm more aware if I can sense that there's something, we're not connecting on that level that I hope to connect with them on. And so maybe then I start thinking a little bit more about myself. Um, Sometimes I'll think to myself, okay, I have to make sure I get this certain topic or question in before the end. But most of the time, I'm very in the moment. And I think that's what helps. But if you're talking about being starstruck, that's
Well, that too.
something
That's
different.
the next question. But it's like it's sometimes like, okay, like, well, I'll finish interviewing somebody and I'll be like, wow, I could have asked this question, I could have asked that question, um, that type of thing. Where I'm like, I wish I was more in the, like. Sometimes it's hard because I mean, and that's just talking to people in general, you know, where you just feel like, wow, I could have said things differently. Did I offend them, or that type of thing? That's what I mean.
hmm I think, first of all, there are always going to be some regrets, I think, after most interviews. For most interviewers, at least this is what I've heard from other people. There are definitely many, many times where I left an interview thinking, oh, I didn't even ask about whatever. But for me, I really am all about listening to what the person tells me and then jumping off from there. So rather than having a formal question and answer session where, like, I ask the question, they answer it, I ask the question, they answer it, my style of interview, and it's not everybody's,
Right.
but for me, I like it to be more open-ended and conversational. And so I feel like the best things happen naturally when the person starts talking about something, and if I'm interested in what they're talking about, that's
Mhm.
my clue that that's something to follow up on. So that's
Right.
another thing that keeps me hyper focused on them and not as out of the moment or focused on myself. because I'm
Gotcha.
waiting. I'm looking. I'm like almost like an investigator looking for the really good gems that are starting to surface, and then I'm trying to pull them out.
Yeah, yeah, that cool. Yeah. So going back to the starstruck thing, I mean, you've interviewed people like Ted Lang, Danny Aiello, Kim Fields, Mario Van Peebles, and there was a the Omar Epps interview that you did was really great because it seemed like he was kind of standoffish at first, but then he just opened up and he just started talking about his time at LaGuardia High School and other things like that. Is anybody you've been kind of starstruck by? You were like, or you interviewed Henry Winkler. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, yes, I think that I've gotten better at it over the years. When I think back to before I had my show and I was doing this only for magazines and newspapers, I was a little more nervous doing the whole thing. So I think no matter who, like I remember Edie Falco from The Sopranos. I remember being so nervous before I met her,
Right.
because she was a big star on The Sopranos, and I'm just like everybody made me nervous back then. Since then, yes, I've had icons, and it's not always the ones that you would think that I would feel more nervous with. I can tell you for sure, one of my most difficult moments was with Spike Lee because
Oh
it's
wow.
Spike Lee.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I mean, that's just scary. I mean, for weeks leading up to it, I was just like a pack of nerves.
Oh
I
wow.
just didn't even want the day to come, which now it's the opposite. I can't wait for my interview days. I love my interview days, no matter who I'm talking to. But then I
Mm.
remember just being like just so stressed out. Like couldn't eat, couldn't sleep the whole thing. And then when I got there to his office, it was like there was this vibe in the office and it felt very tense to me. And it did not help at all with
I
my
bet.
interview. And so that was one of those times when I really was like in my head a little bit, but still reading him. And I'm happy to say that things did turn around, for the better, I would say maybe about midway through the interview. But I was definitely starstruck with him. Ted from The Love Boat, he's
Yeah.
amazing. He is so friendly and natural and real, just like Isaac the bartender. So I actually met him the first time. This was talk about being fortunate. When
Yeah.
I started writing, the Today Show's online, their website, asked me to write an article about the cast from the Love Boat because they were sailing on the Princess Cruises' new boat ship or whatever. So they had this event on this ship. So it's basically the Love Boat.
Yeah.
And I got to go on this trip. They flew me to Fort Lauderdale. I went on
Wow.
this ship on this Princess cruise. I brought my son with me too, who of course had no idea what the Love Boat was, but still, I grew up
Right.
on the Love Boat. So and not only was there a kickoff party that first night with like every, I don't know, 70s and 80s TV star. I can't even name them all. I mean, like Dick Van Dyke and
What?
Lorenzo Lamas and Charlene Tilton, Christopher Knight, Florence Henderson. I mean, and so then the next day, I got to sit down with each of the Love Boat cast members for a separate interview. So I sat down with Ted, and it was like the greatest talk. He's the greatest guy. So he was actually somebody who I went to first when I started my podcast. I'm like, I'm going to go to the people who know me and who feel good about talking to me, and I know they trust me, and I'm going to ask them if they'll be a guest on my show. So it was a
Okay.
real advantage that I had already interviewed people before starting my show. And I reached out to Ted, and he was like, "Yeah, definitely." So when he came to New York, we met up. He was doing a play, and he had a like a play reading, and he invited me to that. And I sat down with him for a long time. And oh yeah, he's just great. So I wasn't really starstruck with him. I would say he felt like a
Right.
friend. Yeah,
That's great.
yeah.
What's the like? So, okay, with your podcast, it says the first on Apple, it says the first episode was on 2017, right?
Yeah.
But it says Tim Gunn's episode was actually the first episode. Can you
Yeah, that
what?
was 2017.
Oh, it was Tim Gunn.
Yeah, Tim Gunn was the first one I ran. So I remember back then they would say, okay, if you're starting a podcast, you want to have 3 episodes ready to go.
Okay.
So I recorded a few at the same, around the same time. I don't remember which one was actually the first one I recorded. I may have been, I think it actually was Tim. Tim, I had Liz Lang. Ted was another one. Debbie Mazar. Tim Daly maybe was one of the first. So I recorded a
Yeah,
bunch of
Tim.
them around the
Yeah.
same time, and then they were the first one. So the first one I released was I think Tim Gunn. I want to say Damon John maybe was the second one, and Debbie Mazar was the third. But
Mm.
Ted was probably a number, I don't know, 4, 5, 6, something like that.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. So what are some of the what are as a podcaster, what are some of the challenges that you go through as a podcaster getting some of these guests when the challenges happen, how do you keep moving, and what motivates you to keep moving
Okay, so you're asking specifically about the challenges of getting guests or the challenges of podcasting overall?
overall and also getting guests?
Okay, so overall, I would say my biggest challenge is the technical aspect of it. So I'm not a technical person in any way, shape, or form. Don't like it. I'm not interested in it. Don't give me gadgets and gear. I don't care.
Right,
But as a podcaster, you have to care. And I know now that people have these packages or companies will do this where, oh, I want to start a podcast. So you just sign on with this company and they do everything for you,
right.
basically. I didn't have that. So I just had to learn it all by myself. So I did
Wow.
my research, watched my YouTube videos, I guess, on what kind of voice recorder I needed, what kind of mics. And there have been changes over the years. But
Mhm.
um, to me, the technical aspect of everything is just too much to bear, but I bear it. I just do. I just do it because you have to do it. So, um, I guess I'm at the point now where I can't wait to have a full staff. This one's going to do that. This one's going to do that. And I'm kind of
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
process of doing that. But I had to learn how to do it all. So I think but I also don't think that's a bad thing at the beginning because then you really understand all the nuts and bolts of everything. So I just push on ahead and try not to think too hard about it when I have to do it.
Mm.
So for booking guests, I mean,
Yes,
that's a constant challenge. That's
yes.
I know that's one of the most popular questions I get is like, how do you book all these guests? And so I usually say something along the lines of, well, I've built relationships over the years and people trust me. And because that's definitely true. And just like I was already telling you with Ted and Damon John
Yeah.
was the same thing. I had already written a piece for the New York Times about him. And so he had already met me. We already sat down together for a long talk and he had a good feeling about me. So
Okay.
I reached out to him and he did agreed to do the podcast with me. So there's all of that. But at the same time, even with that, it's hard to book celebrities. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard for everybody to book celebrities, even if you're from the stories I hear, even the Today Show versus Good Morning America are in a constant battle of like, how do we get an exclusive with this celebrity over, the other show? So that's you have to thick skin is really what it's about. Not
Yeah.
only thick skin, but just constantly asking. You have to ask. If you don't ask for something in life, you're not going to get it. These guests aren't just falling onto my lap. I mean, yes, I get pitched guests. That's true. But at the same time, I have to work to make that happen. So
Right.
you have to ask and you have to accept lots of no's. But to me,
Yes.
it's also kind of a game. Like, it's so
Yeah.
exciting to me
Yeah.
when I know I have a lot of feelers out, like, oh, let's see what this, batch out of this batch, who comes to the surface and who I'm going to get to talk to. If it's like in a batch at a certain point in time, I like having that out there. I love getting pitched new people. And when I score somebody who feels really big to me or good or interesting to me, I get very excited. So it all pays off.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I agree because like a lot of times, you'll have, I have not been doing this as long as you have, and I've you just gotta, pivot, and just roll with the punches and keep going, and like when you accepted, coming on, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I wanted to ask you about Mayan Bialik's Breakdown, which is another podcast that I listened to that you were a guest on. What was that like? That's really great.
Yeah, that was great. That was a nice surprise too. I had Mayim on my show. I guess it was about a year ago, maybe a little over a year ago now, and I was excited to land her as a guest too. I don't remember. I think I had. And that's another thing is patience. So like, I think I might
Yes.
have reached out to her reps a couple of years ago, and she wasn't available at the time. She was busy, whatever, which is typical. And then I kept I kept up with it. So maybe every 6 months or something, I would reach out to the rep and say, hey, if Mayim's available, I'd still love to have her on the show. And then one day out of the blue, her rep emailed me and said, Mayim would love to do your show. Is now a good time for you? So I was like, yes, yeah. So
Yeah.
again, I'm not going to get that unless I already started with those other
Right.
things and didn't
Right.
just, give up. So, yeah, so we booked her on my show. And when she came on, I was really excited to talk to her because I didn't watch The Big Bang Theory, I have to confess. I did watch Blossom though growing up.
Yes, me too.
Yeah, and I was well
Whoa.
aware of who she was, right, Joey? Um, so I was excited to get her as a guest, and then I remember doing my research on her, and I listened to a podcast. She was a guest on. I mentioned this to her on my show. I forget his name, Steve. He's the Freakonomics author, Steven somebody. I'm forgetting his name, but she was a guest on his show, and she was such a good guest. Like she seemed so interesting to me, and I was getting very excited to talk to her. But I was also sometimes when I listen to a really great podcast with a guest, I'm almost reluctant to have them as a guest on my show because I feel like they already said all these good things. So like, how are they going to
Right. Right.
repeat it with me? Which is dumb. And that's like head trash. You got to get rid of that. But
Mhm.
sometimes that is how I think. So I remember feeling a little bit intimidated by the fact that it was such a good episode. But then she came on and she was like so good with me too. And I felt like it was a good conversation. And then at the end, she said she liked it too. And she's like, oh, I kind of feel like I wish you were my therapist now. Don't tell my therapist this. And so that was really cool. And then she asked me to come on to her show, and
Right.
boom, I was on. So yeah, it was great. I mean, she was just starting the show at that point, and she was a real pro. I told her rep this as well. I was like, you guys are total pros because I work with a lot of different people, celebrities and reps, and they were just so organized about everything. Like they would send me these emails with all the details on what to expect ahead of time, and they would make sure everything was all confirmed and whatnot. And then we recorded it. She has a co-host with her, so
Yes, Jonathan.
um, yes, Jonathan, exactly.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what she was going to ask me about. I knew that she wanted me to be on actually as a therapist, so it was more of a
Okay.
mental
Yeah.
health because that's her focus. And yeah, it was fun. I mean, it was interesting. It was just released maybe a month or so ago, and I
Hmm.
remember listening to it. And I was like, at the beginning, I could tell. Speaking of starstruck or nervous, I think I was nervous at the beginning, and I was kind of like, I was not saying anything valuable. And then I noticed myself kind of relax after a little bit, maybe after 10 minutes or something like that. And I think it got better as the time went on. But yeah, that was a cool experience too. And it's interesting to see it from both sides, which is like right now what I'm doing with you. It's interesting to see it from my guest's perspective.
Yeah. There was a great episode, and I enjoyed it. I was yeah, I like what her thing was. She's just trying to, like, she's an advocate for mental health, and I love that. I'm glad we're living in a time where right now it's we have to talk about it. We have to talk about mental health. We have to talk about these things because we're losing a lot of great people because of that. So what are you doing for? I mean, what are you doing for your mental health? How are you staying sane? I mean, because we've had a tough year of 2020,
Yeah.
as you know, and I wanted to ask you also on top of that, how did 2020 change you, and what did you learn about yourself from the year of 2020 and that you carried over to this past 2 years? So,
Yeah, 2020. 2020.
yeah.
2021.
Yes.
All of it. I honestly felt like I was doing okay in 2020. But when I think back to it, I have to tell you, I kind of feel like PTSD type
Yeah.
symptoms. Like, I don't want to think about it. And I'm not a person who blocks things out. Like, I'm a person who faces things,
Hey,
talks
yeah.
about things. That's how I always, in terms of mental health in general, I talk about things. So I communicate and I have people who I can talk to about what's
Hmm.
going on. And I also reflect a lot and try to figure myself out a lot. So those are like my tools, I think. The normal things like the tips that I gave on Mayim's show, like just taking good care of yourself with self care and sleeping as much as you can, but not getting stressed out if you don't sleep enough, that kind of thing. Like, yeah, that all matters. And I take long walks with my dog and things like that. But to me, it's all about talking it out and talking it through.
Yeah.
Um, when I think back to that, though, it really feels traumatic to me. Like it was a very upsetting year, to say the least. So
Yeah.
between the pandemic and everything that was happening with Black Lives Matter, and I just,
Yeah.
all of it was so heavy to me and important to me. Like it just, it, you know, it was, it, I still think it was a critical time that we all needed to go through so that hopefully change will come. And I know, you know, you have a better perspective on it than I do, more personal perspective. I don't, you know, I hope that these really uncomfortable moments in time are necessary for real change to happen. But I also know that it takes a lot of time. So I wanted to be part of that. I wanted to help people with that. I wanted to understand more, and I certainly learned more. It's like, oh, these were always my views to begin with. So,
Mhm.
you know, it just was just upsetting to me, just that everybody didn't think the same way. Like, how is not everybody, you know, outraged
Yeah.
and for always, right? And
Yeah.
so to me, it was just seeing people not, that was just disturbing to me.
Yeah.
So I still, you can see, like, I still don't feel good about all of it. Because I just want to, I want more from everybody. I
Yeah.
expect more from people. Like, I think I'm an optimist. I feel like people are good. I see the best in people.
Hmm.
And I don't really understand the other side of it. So,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know how I, it's not over. It was 1 year, but it certainly was just the beginning. It wasn't
Yeah.
just you know, random event in the middle of nowhere. So I'm just kind of trying to get through it and learn something from it and figure something out. I mean, in terms of like, what did I learn? That was part of your question. What did I learn? I don't, I just, I think that again, it's like maybe my expectations are too high. I'm not really
Mm.
sure. I think I maybe learned a little bit more about how people can be, and that not everybody feels the same way. I don't know. I think a lot of these lessons are going to come out later when we're a lot further away
Mm.
to figure out. I feel like we need to be well removed from situations, and many times, you know, you can look back on things 20 years ago, and that's when it kind of, like, you get these insights or whatever. So I'm not even sure what I learned. What did you learn?
Well, oh, so much. Well, like the combination of events with Black Lives Matter, COVID, and all of those things, it was quite a bit to handle. But then there were some positive aspects, like seeing Will Smith and Janet Hubert patch away a 30-year grudge, forgiveness, and seeing the movie Soul, Pixar movie, just taught me that you can't focus on one thing and one thing only sometimes, because you'll miss everything around you. You know, um, just holding on to any kind of grudge just seems silly to me. Especially after that year. Because time is short. Life is short. We gotta, like. I'm not saying, like, we all have to hold hands and sing kumbaya, but what I am saying is we have to, like, try to get along. And that's the way I feel. Angry about something, valid. Sorry.
Hmm.
If you're angry about something, you have a right to be angry about it, but you have to choose a positive outlet. If you're angry about something, go punch on a punching bag, or run, or do something like that. But don't you got to be careful about what you say to people. You got to be careful. I mean, because your words matter, and words hurt. So that's what I got from it. And then, just like I said, going back to life is just short. Just thinking about Chadwick Boseman passing away, which really, it hurt me, because it's just like, man, this guy, knowing what he's went through as an actor, he was still going through chemo while acting, and it's powerful. But yeah,
Hmm.
I just learned that you have to take life one day at a time, and you just have to, and you do have. I think life is short, and being that life is short, you do have to follow your dreams. And one of my dreams was doing a podcast, and I'm doing it. And so you just have to go for it. And I love the quote that you put on your Instagram, and it was an Oprah Winfrey quote where it says, you get in life what you have the courage to ask for. And it's just simple as saying, hey, Kara, I really like your show. would you mind coming on my show? And I'm really happy that you decided to do that. I'm not exactly sure why you did it, but I'm glad you did it, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I was talking about before, and it's so true. And I really, the more I go on in life and the more that I've had this show, the more I
Hmm.
realize it is true. You have to just ask for these things. And, you don't know. Don't say no for somebody else. I tell my kids this all the time. Don't you decide no for someone else. Let them tell you no. And they may not even tell you no, but if you decide no ahead of time by not asking, then it's
Yes.
definitely a no.
No. Yes. Yes.
So, I said yes to you because I got a vibe that yes, you really were genuine and you love what you're doing. You're just starting out and I get it. I was there too.
Yeah.
And I know that you're enthusiastic. You seem like you knew what my show was when you asked. So I'll give you a little tip too, or other people a tip that if you're trying to book a guest for your show and you really don't even know what that person does or who they are, that's going to turn them off right away, right? So like I get some people asking me to be on the show to talk about something that has nothing to do with me. So it's like, well, what are you even talking about? So I'm not going to go on a show to talk about real estate. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right. 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 Right.
I mean, maybe I'll talk about real estate that was used in films and TV because that's very exciting. I've actually gone to a lot of locations where filming has been done. That's very cool, but that kind of
Nice.
thing. So, yeah, you had that, but that was why. So, and I like being on shows. Like, it's fun for me. I don't mind talking about myself. I know what it's like to be on the other side, like we were saying before. So, I'm happy to do it. So if you ask in the right way and it looks like you have the right stuff, then yes, I'm going to say yes.
I really appreciate it. How do you? I just want to know, how do you juggle being a mom and podcasting and writing and walking the dog? How do you balance all of
Well, that's just how I thrive, honestly.
that? Okay.
I get bored with routine. I don't like doing the same thing over and over again. I really hate it. Like I don't like that kind of thing. So the
Mm,
more things I have going on that I'm interested in, the easier it is to do it all. I mean, there are sometimes I feel a little overwhelmed, but not that often, honestly. And I've kind of gotten a handle on that too. Like even if you feel overwhelmed, like you don't have to. You're going to get it all done. It's going to happen. So
yeah.
that's a mindset as well. Or like realizing the psychology behind it. So I just do it. I like my life to be full. I love my kids, and when they were younger, it was a little more hands on. So I wasn't doing my own show when they were very little. That happened when they were a little bit older, so that was easy enough. So of course everybody's around and back and forth now anyway. So it's a little harder when I move to Zoom and suddenly I have a house with five people and a dog and a hamster, but the hamster doesn't really stay awake during the
You
day.
have a
So that's
hamster?
fun. Yeah, my son has a
Oh,
hamster named
oh,
Johnny, Giancarlo.
nice. That is so cool.
But
Oh my
I just
gosh.
like doing a lot personally. So I have to do that. Yeah.
Cool. I understand because I'm starting to learn about myself. It's like the more I do, like if I have a day off, for example, because I have a job, and if I have a day off, sometimes I do absolutely nothing, and then I feel like crap. But if I have more of a structure, like I had to work today, have an interview today, and then like if I just keep things in a structured a schedule, I function better. I wanted to ask you something too. You love Cobra Kai. I was listening to one of your interviews. I think you were talking to Steve Zahn, right? Yeah. And I'm a fan of the show too. And I just finished the fourth season and I thought it was great. What did you think of the fourth season? Oh, by the way, this might be spoilers. So spoilers, spoilers, spoilers.
Well, it's not going to be because I haven't seen it yet. Can you believe it?
What?
I know. So I know I was raving about it to Steve Zahn, and I was super excited because I interviewed Miguel. His name is Sholo Maridueña.
Yeah,
So
yes.
he plays Miguel. So I interviewed him on the show. He was on Really Famous. And I loved it. He was great. He was the youngest person to ever be a guest on my show. I think
Right.
he was 19 at the time, and
Hmm.
he was fabulous, like so good, a good guest.
Right.
So I was obsessed with it when it first came out, and mostly it was because of Johnny. Like I cracked up at Johnny Lawrence. Like all the the his faux pas and his ignorance was
Yes.
too funny for me. And I just could not even take it. And season two was good too, but I have to admit that I kind of fell, my interest level fell um, by the end of season two and then into season three.
Three.
I was excited for it to come back season four, and no hate, but I started it maybe a week ago, and then my daughter came home with a friend, and they walked in. It was really literally 1 minute after I had started it, and I got distracted, and I just haven't gotten back to it. I just find it sitting there for me. So, is it good?
It is. See, and it's funny that you say that because see, I find that with I mean, it's nothing against the show's quality. It's just that there's so many things pulling at you. You know, the attention that you're getting. You compete. Netflix. There's stuff on Netflix. There's stuff on Disney Plus. There's you got things in your own life. So it's so easy. Like there be moments I'm like, man, oh, I forgot I didn't finish this series because something happened. But yes, it's really good. Because Karate Kid Part 3 is kind of like the redheaded stepchild of the trilogy, but I love the character of Terry Silver, and he delivers. It's really
Okay.
good. I really enjoy it. I like season 3 a lot more because I love Karate Kid Part 2. But yeah, the season, yeah, it's good stuff. Good stuff.
Okay,
Good
so I'll
stuff.
get back to it. I guess like
Yes.
by nature, karate doesn't really do the whole karate storyline was not as exciting to me.
Right.
But I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna get back to it. It's gonna be there. But you're right. There are always so many things to watch that it's like sometimes I'm just too excited that I have so many things that I want to catch up on. So, but that's still there. I'm gonna get to it.
Cool. What are some of the podcasts that you listen to?
Yeah, so I listen to basically a very similar, like the same genre that my podcast is in. So it's these
Mhm.
long form, unstructured interviews that I love. My favorite is WTF with Mark Maron. When I started listening to him, I was like, this guy is so obnoxious. He's such a narcissist. Like he's so self-obsessed, so neurotic. Like enough about you. But I have to
Right.
say, that I'm still listening because I watched him evolve as he interviewed more and more people. I found him
Okay.
to become very sensitive to other people and very thoughtful and understanding. And also, he learned how to share about himself without being obsessed. So he was able to like really move towards the other person. So I definitely recommend WTF, Mark Maron. That's one that I
WTF.
listen to. I listen to Fresh Air with Terry Gross. Um, Conan O'Brien, if he has a friend that I, or a friend, it's called Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend, but if he has a guest that I'm really interested in, sometimes I think the jokes get to be a little bit too much for me, especially if they're
Uh,
like, I find that if there are two comedians on a podcast,
yeah.
it's just like, it gets a little out of control. I love comedy and I love comedians, but I get like, all right, this is too much because I feel like they're trying to one up each other a lot with laughs
Right.
and it's
Right.
not
Right.
really
Right.
genuine. And I like the real authentic conversation. So those I will listen to. Dax Shepard, again, if it's a good guest. Kind of blanking on the other ones. Mayim show sometimes I'll tune into.
Mhm.
The more I walk my dog, the more podcasts I get to listen to.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
because I walk her for like an hour, and that's perfect timing to pop in a podcast. Yeah, those are some of my staples.
Do you listen to your show?
So that's a good question. I would say yes to that. Sometimes I don't, but I always do because I'm the one who edits the podcast. So nobody
Yes.
has ever edited an episode of Really Famous the podcast. So other people have edited
Okay.
the video interviews, but because that's a different animal, that's on YouTube, and we break it up into different segments. And sometimes even
Right.
if we have the full one, it's not going to be the super long form uncut version. So every single podcast episode that has aired on Really Famous, I have edited the audio for. So I am going to listen to it then. So I am going to hear it again. Sometimes when it comes out, if I haven't listened to it in a while, I will listen to it again just to refresh my memory. Like this morning, I had Apollo Ono, the Olympic speed skating
Yeah, I
champion.
started listening to that one. Yes.
Yeah, so he dropped what's today? Tuesday? I think he dropped
Yes.
today. So this morning when I was putting my makeup on, I listened to his in the background. But I will tell you a little secret. I put it on in double speed.
Okay.
So
Double
that way
speed?
double speed. So that way I remember and I can remind myself of the conversation we had, but it didn't
Okay.
take an hour. It took a half hour.
Nice. Nice. Is there somebody, okay, I know you just had Julian McMahon on recently, and I know he was like a one person that you really wanted on the show. And I totally forgot that he was on Charmed, which I watched Charmed religiously. But who all right, okay. Who are some of the people that you really, really, really want on your show? Like in a perfect world, who would you really like
Okay,
want
so
on your show?
Julian was actually somebody who came to me. I didn't even know who he was, believe it or not. I mean, I don't know if I should admit this, but I think I had seen maybe one episode of Nip Tuck years
Yeah.
ago.
I never
But I
seen it.
really, yeah, but somebody pitched him to me, and they said, will you interview Julian? He's on a new show, FBI Most Wanted, and I think she had spelled his name wrong, and I didn't know who it was, and I was like looking up this name, and then I realized, oh, that's the Nip Tuck guy.
Right.
So I did. That's how he came on my show the first time. It was actually CBS who came to me pitching him, and
Gotcha.
but then I really liked him, and we tried to get a second one going. And it took a year, but yes, he was just recently on again. But okay, so if you're gonna ask who my dream guests are, like to this day, right now, is that
Yeah.
what you're asking?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so it changes a lot and I have so many. I'm gonna forget all of them right now, but sometimes during the summer I make a little video clip of my dream guests and I
Oh,
try to remember all the people I dream of having on the show and I always forget people and it changes all the time. So some of the people I have one name that's sticking out to me because I remember that I forgot her last time. Julia Louis Dreyfus would be a big dream for me. She's
nice.
amazing. Speaking of which, I've been trying to get Sam Richardson on. He was on Veep with her.
Okay.
I came close, but it fell through. I don't know what happened. And I tried again, just like I did with Mayim. I reached back out, but he has not come to me yet. Um, so many. John Travolta.
Yeah.
I have to say, Spike Lee, believe it or not. So when I met Spike Lee, it wasn't for Really Famous, it was for the New York Times. And
Okay.
at the end of it, I asked him, I said, will you be on my show, Really Famous? And he's like, and I said, Michael Imperioli was on it and Danny Aiello was on it. You've worked with them both. I know you have a
Right.
good relationship with each of them. They'll vouch for me. And it's true because both of them I was friends with both of them after the show. Like they
Right.
both totally went for my style, whatever. So Danny unfortunately died about 2 years ago, and
Yeah.
but Michael and I are still in touch, and he's been on my show 3 times. So he said at the end, Spike said, "Send me Aiello and Imperioli," and I said, "Oh, you want me to get them to say something to you?" And he's like, "No, send me their episodes." So I did, but then he didn't do it. So I'm still
Oh.
waiting. I'm still waiting. I saw him at Danny Aiello's memorial service. He spoke
Mhm.
in front of the crowd. It was really nice. He went up with John Turturro, and I remember seeing him coming in to the up the aisle, and I remember thinking, I feel like I have to ask him to be on my show, but this is like a really weird time to do it.
Right.
So I was
Right.
just like, but then actually what happened, that's not even exactly what happened now that I remember. I had edited my talk with Danny Aiello just before
Hmm.
that. I ran it again after Danny died, like the day after. And I
Right.
remember listening and Danny and I had talked about Spike. And so I actually took a clip from my interview with him where Danny was talking about Spike.
Right.
And I wanted to send that to Spike so he had a nice memory of it because I know he really loved Danny. So
Yes.
I went up to Spike when he was coming up the aisle and I said, Spike, it's Kara, you're a New York Times writer or whatever. He's like, I know who you are. And I was like, oh, okay. So I told him I wanted to send him this thing. I didn't ask him to be on the show. I forgot.
Right.
Not that day, but I did say I have this clip I want to share with you. And I said, he's like, email it to me. And I said, okay, I don't know your email. So he gave me his email and I
Cool.
sent it to him after that. But he has yet to say yes to the show. And I've asked him a few different times. I will still be asking him. Spike Lee is a dream guest. Although he
Right
might be a
on.
nightmare because he's not that easy to interview.
I've heard he could be a little difficult. He's one of my heroes too. But oh wow, this has been great. I just have a question. Is there anything you want people to know as far as like what you have coming in the near future?
Sure. I mean, I would love to have everybody connect with me. Any of your people, your listeners. What do you call them? Your listeners, right? Because it's a podcast
Yes,
only. You don't do the video, or do you
I
do
do
the
the
video as
video.
well? Okay.
I do the
So
video and
so
the podcast.
viewers too. So listeners and viewers, your
Yes.
fans. If anybody wants to connect with me, follow me on social media. Amazing. I'd love that. So on Instagram, I'm at Kara Mayer Robinson. It's a mouthful. And Twitter, I'm at Kara121, and Facebook, Kara Mayer Robinson. And of course, if they want to subscribe to my YouTube channel, great. It's youtube.com/really famous. And then, you'll get notified about all the things that are coming up. I have some very exciting people coming up, and more to come.
Yes, I'm excited. I'm excited about the Danny Pudi. Is that how you say his last
Oh,
name?
yeah, Danny Pudi. Uh huh.
Yes. When is that going to be airing?
So that's going to air very soon.
Okay.
I believe in the next couple weeks he's ready to go. I really like that. That was a good talk. He's
Yes.
great. And if do you watch Community?
I don't, but he did the voice of Huey on DuckTales.
Yeah, he
And I
did.
was just like, I'm pretty excited about that. I've not yet. It's like one of those shows like Community, and I've not seen yet, and I've not been able to get into it because everybody talks about it. I'm like, okay, I'll watch it one day, but I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah. Well, he's an interesting guy. I really like very down to earth. I really liked that talk. So that's a good one
Nice.
coming up for sure. I just talked to Meredith Vieira today. She, of course, was, I mean, she's groundbreaking in terms of
Yes,
journalism, broadcast
she was on The
journalism.
View, right?
Yeah,
She was
she
one of
was
the
one of
first
the
ladies on The View.
Yeah, one of the founding members, Barbara Walters, asked her to be on the show. She tells me about the audition that she had,
Wow.
and it's so interesting. She was like the youngest I think the youngest reporter, maybe the youngest woman on 60 Minutes. She was on the Today Show, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and we had a great
Yes.
talk today. So that's another good one coming up.
Wow. I look forward to listening to them both and seeing them too on your YouTube channel. And I really appreciate all your time. I know you got things to do, but I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks. It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me. I really liked it. You're a good
Yes.
interviewer.
Oh, thank you. Gosh, that means a lot. That means a whole lot. But uh, thank you for coming on the show, and I hope you have an awesome day. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Same to you. Thank you.
All right,
Take
ciao.
care.
Bye.